With the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season having officially ended today, I will go over part 2 of this hurricane season in this video. Part 2 was much crazier than part 1, so stick around here exclusively on TBF Cyclone. It's TBF Cyclone, Monday, December 1st, 2025. Yesterday was the final day of hurricane season. Now we are 182 days away from the start of next hurricane season, June 1st. So we are now in the off season, but now wouldn't be a terrible time to start making little preparations for the upcoming hurricane season. You can't be too prepared. You could just start making little preparations, just like make sure you have stuff ready to go for the next hurricane season. All right, so this is the second half of the little mini-series I'm doing of 2 videos of this hurricane season. Hurricane Gabrielle will start off with the second half of hurricane season. It was an odd storm. It made it pretty far north, and then when it was pretty far north, it rapidly intensified, an area you don't usually see rapid intensification. However, this did end up rapidly intensifying, reached a preliminary peak intensity of 140 miles an hour. Later on, continuing later into September, we saw hurricanes Umberto, which rapidly intensified from the 25th through the 27th. It rapidly intensified into a Category 5 hurricane, and it looked almost perfect. I mean, almost perfectly circular, and then the eye was perfectly circular. And then even the storm itself, again, as I just said, was perfectly circular. And Hurricane Umberto actually saved the United States from a direct Category 2 or 3 hurricane landfall. Because Umberto got strong enough, it was actually able to pull Imelda out to sea because its pressure was so low. What low pressure does is it kind of sucks things towards it, and it sucked Imelda toward Umberto, pulling Imelda out to sea. Had it not been for Umberto, Imelda would have continued traveling toward the Carolinas and likely made a landfall as a Category 2 or 3 storm. Going further into the month of October, that's when Imelda dissipated. October 1st is when things started to get a little crazy. We go to October 21st, and again, this website is not cooperating with me today, so hopefully this should work. Here, October 21st is when Tropical Storm Melissa developed. It developed with 50-mile-an-hour sustained winds, and had previously, like as an invest the day before, had reached gale force winds 40 miles an hour, and then all it needed was to get organized enough to reach get organized enough to get a name, and then it did on the morning of October 21st at around 11 a.m. And then after it developed, it really struggled to organize. What happened is the 22nd, 23rd, and I believe just the 22nd and 23rd, my bad. There was quite a bit of wind shear kind of keeping this storm from developing. So this storm did just sit around in the Caribbean. If it hadn't been sitting around, it would have remained a weak storm just moving toward Jamaica and hit as a weak storm. But because it was sitting around, by the 24th, it actually got organized. And then it became a hurricane on the 25th. After that, it rapidly intensified. It went from 75 to 90 to 100, and then 115 to 120, all the way up to 140. October 26th, its intensity kind of stalled a little bit at 140 miles an hour. However, as we got later into the day, it continued gaining intensity, and then it reached Category 5 status all day on the 27th from 5 p.m. to the end of the day, and then the 28th of October from the beginning of the day to about 1 or 2 o'clock, or more like 4 o'clock, is when it was a Category 5 storm. So it was a Category 5 storm for quite a bit, but this storm was extremely devastating. Here it was, its peak intensity shortly before landfall, and it made landfall at its peak intensity, 185 miles an hour. This is the strongest Atlantic hurricane landfall ever in history, tied with the 1935 Labor Day hurricane, and it's very possible it could have been stronger. I think, and there is evidence behind this, that this may have been a 190, 195, or even a 200 mile an hour storm. I'm leaning toward the more 195 to 200 range, but the storm already hit, so it would just be for record-keeping purposes, and it did make landfall at around 1 o'clock that morning, or 1 o'clock that afternoon, and it was just very catastrophic. Its death toll is up to 102. Last time I reported on it, it was still at 102, and its damage costs are at $10 billion. It is the costliest, not just hurricane, but natural disaster in Jamaican history. So please pray for Jamaica. They are still recovering from this storm, and it's going to be many years of recovery to come. Thanks for watching, and see ya.